Welcome to the Polygamer podcast, where gaming is for everyone. Join us as we expand the boundaries of the gaming community.
Hello and welcome to the Polygamer podcast, episode number 56 for November 23rd, 2016. I'm your host, Ken Gagne. Way back on the very first episode of Polygamer in July of 2014, I interviewed Mr. Matt Conn, the founder of GaymerX, an annual video game convention for the LGBT community and its allies. I had previously supported GaymerX on Kickstarter, but the person I was years ago was sincerely hesitant to attend the event itself. I wasn't sure I would fit in. I finally attended my first GaymerX in December of 2015 and had a fantastic time. So I was delighted to discover that GaymerX was coming to the East Coast. I live in Boston. GaymerX has always been held in California, but earlier this month, in November of 2016, it came to New York City for the first time. So I hopped a 5-hour bus ride down and had a great time at GaymerX East. In fact, I moderated a panel that included several alumni from this podcast. Not only Mr. Matt Conn from episode number 1, but also Khadeja Merenkov and Francesca Carletto-Leon. We had a great time talking about how we engage in diversity efforts in the gaming space and what keeps us inspired. This episode of Polygamer is the audio from that panel. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a direct feed from the microphones, so I did my best to get a live recording, and so I apologize if the audio quality isn't quite up to the standard that previous episodes of Polygamer have set. I will be honest, though, I was hesitant to go to this GaymerX, not because of the convention, but because it was right on the heels of the United States presidential election, which left me feeling just devastated. However, I was glad I went to GaymerX because I found a community of people who were feeling similarly, and it was very helpful to know that we're all in this together and that there are things we can do to affect positive change, both in gaming and elsewhere in the world. In fact, I've compiled some of those resources into a document that you can find at helplaw.us/call. If you're wondering how to call your senators, your representatives, your speakers of the houses, your minority and majority leaders, this list gives you all the phone numbers and the scripts, as well as scripts you can use to fax House Oversight Committee and the Electoral College. helplaw.us/call. And if you go to just helplaw.us, you'll be redirected to Amazon, where 4% of your purchase will be donated to the ACLU. 4%, that's 8 times more than if you use the Amazon Smile program. Some people are calling for Amazon to be boycotted because they do sell the merchandise brand of our president-elect, but I choose to support them for other reasons, such as the generous support of the ACLU and also their sterling track record for supporting LGBT rights. So again, if you're doing any holiday shopping, either Black Friday or Cyber Monday, go to helplaw.us. In the meantime, I hope this episode of Polygamer provides you with some inspiration and some encouragement in what can be a challenging time. I hope you and yours have a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving, if that is a holiday that you celebrate. And regardless, I'll see you again next month.
Hello and welcome to the Polygamer podcast. My name is Ken Gagne, your host, and we are recording live today on Sunday, November 13th at GaymerX East in New York City. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, or just those who need a refresher, the Polygamer podcast is a bi-weekly interview-based podcast of equality and diversity in gaming by celebrating those who are performing and doing amazing, outrageous, extremely interesting, and unusual things, like the 3 guests we have today, who are all alumni or alumnae of the Polygamer podcast. Polygamer was founded in July of 2014 as a result of a panel I recorded at PAX East that year, talking about feminism in gaming. And I decided to continue that conversation beyond the confines of PAX, which not everybody can or wants to be present at, and have the conversation continue with a different guest on every episode. And 3 alumni that we have joining us today. First, there is Mr. Matt Conn, the CEO of Midboss and president of GaymerX. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
How are you? So you were the guest. I mean, very literally, I would not be here if it weren't for you, and not just because you founded the event that we're all standing at, but because you were guest number 1 on Polygamer.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to get a first guest because you can't look at what you've accomplished. You can't show off a portfolio. You just have to say, hey, I have an unproven concept, an idea for a podcast. You have no idea who I am. Do you want to be on my show? And you said, sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that you just from talking to you, I could tell that this is something you're super passionate about. And you're super smart and cool guy. So, of course, I've jumped at the opportunity.
Oh, you make me blush. Come on, man. You're also the only person to have been a guest on my show twice. Actually, there's one other person, Susan Arndt, but you were on episode number 32, I believe, as well.
Oh, now I'm going to do it 3 times.
Oh my goodness. And that was actually a bit of a bait and switch because I have another podcast all about indie games and you were supposed to be on that podcast, but you wouldn't stop talking and that podcast is only supposed to be a half hour long. So at the end of the show, I'm like, hey Matt, how about if we put this audio on Polygamer instead?
You revealed my ruse. Really, I just started all these events and I just love to talk.
Well, I think loquaciousness is a positive quality in an event organizer.
Thank you.
So well done. Also joining us today is Khadeja Merenkov.
Hey, everybody.
You can tell she is a professional voiceover artist. That is her accomplishment. And she came onto my podcast because she did an ethnographic study of the indie game scene in Boston and just fell in love with that community and has not been able to tear herself away from it ever since. Hello, Khadeja.
Yeah, it's like fly paper, and I'm just a fly, and I just can't get the hell off of you guys. But yeah, I'm really he's telling the truth though. I made a lot of good friends. We have a lot in common. Did you have a question there that I just totally forgot? Okay, that's cool.
And you have also been on my show twice, but once the guest, you are the only person to have hosted an episode of Polygamer besides myself.
Yeah, it was like really awkward because I'm not really good at interviewing at all. So I suggest you don't have to listen to it, but it was pretty cool. It was with Pushing Up Roses, who's this really, if you haven't heard of her, she's this really great Let's Player, and she's beautiful and awesome and has these amazing tattoos she designed for herself. She's the coolest. Yeah. So anyway, it was a pleasure interviewing her. I'm just not the best at it.
No, I think she did a fantastic job because one of the reasons I founded Polygamer is because as a straight white cisgender guy, my perspective and my experience is extremely limited, and I am creating a space where I am asking people to take the time to share with me their experiences, and thus also with the audience, that people who haven't had those experiences or don't know how to ask those questions can learn from each other. At that point in the development of Polygamer, this was episode number 10 that you hosted, I really didn't know yet how to talk to a woman who does YouTube videos without asking her, so what is it like to be a woman on YouTube? And that's not what she wants to talk about. She wants to talk about her art and her craft, and because there's so much more to her than just the gender she was assigned at birth. And so I asked Khadeja, I saw that you liked her on Facebook. And so I said, could you please do this podcast? And I can learn from you the best way to talk to people about these topics. And I hope I've done a better job since then. I just had my show this past week, Seriously Clara, who is a Twitch live streamer of indie games. And we had a great discussion, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice.
And the whole time I was talking to her, I was just thinking, Khadeja would be so proud of me. Or,
You didn't tell me.
well, I was too nervous. Because what if you weren't? I like the idea of you being proud of me.
Okay, that's fine, man.
Yeah.
That's good. It's very smart.
I'm also putting people's Twitter handles up on the screen. Obviously, it's an audio podcast, so those handles are, I am Gamebits, Matt is Matt Conn, Khadeja is, how do you pronounce your Twitter handle?
Oh, Khachov, to make it difficult.
So it's Khakhov. And the last person we have on our show, on our panel today, is Francesca Carletto-Leon. Hello, Francesca.
Hey there.
So you are the co-founder of Contigo?
Yes.
Contigo Studios, who is here at GaymerX exhibiting the game Starcrossed. You are also a player satisfaction representative?
Yeah, it's like player support.
Player support at Proletariat.
Yep.
And do they make a zombie world domination game?
So their first title, which is a mobile game, which I wasn't part of because that was the previous game, is World Zombination. It's a really cool, really gorgeous mobile game, which is actually why I became interested in the company and started playing it. Just I was really impressed by how gorgeous this mobile game was. And the game they're working on now is Streamline, which is actually a stream-first game. So it's actually designed to be broadcasted like on Twitch and incorporates like viewer interaction into the game.
Nice.
Yeah.
But at the time you were on my podcast, which is just episode 33 or 35, about a year ago, you hadn't yet taken on those roles. You were on my show because I met you at Women in Games Boston, which is a monthly meetup that everybody should check out, especially if you're in Boston. And you are the founder of the Diversity in Games Club at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, or WPI, which was your undergraduate at the time, now your alma mater, and also my alma mater, just divided by about 15 years. So I thought it was great that we had that in common and that you were broaching this subject at such an early point in your career, whereas it took me about 15 years longer to get there. And your Twitter handle is, how do you pronounce that? Chesky?
It's a Chesky, yeah.
So CESCHIII.
Aye.
Aye, Captain. All right. Now that we're all introduced, we're all going to sit together as friends, because I don't like podiums and lecterns. It seems to imply some sort of a hierarchy, which makes me really uncomfortable. So, hi, Matt.
Hello.
Cool. What are you doing to me? Oh. So, the reason that all these amazing people have been on my show, and by the way, Matt and Khadeja were among the first 5 guests back when it was also a video podcast, which was super awkward. It was just like 2 talking heads on webcams staring at each other for an hour.
No,
and I was still trying to figure out how this thing worked. So I had like these studio lights, and by the end of the show, I was just like all sweat. It was awful. And after Khadeja was the very last episode, I'm like, I'm not going to put anybody through that ever again. But thank you, you two especially, because that took a lot of courage to put yourself out there like that. But each of you have been on the podcast not just because you may represent a certain demographic, but because you're all activists. You all are doing something to advance the causes of equality and diversity in gaming, which is, I think, fantastic. I'm curious, what motivated you to take on that role? Like, sure, we all want to see things happen in our community, but not all of us say, and I will be the one to make it happen. So I'm curious to know what pushed you over the edge to say, I am going to be the person to do that thing. Why don't we start with Matt and go down the line?
I think it just came down to, like, I grew up in Vermont. I was born here in New York, but I grew up in Vermont my entire life. It was like, it was 98.1% white. So, like, the school I went to, there was, there's like 1 Asian kid, 2 black kids. It was like 2,800 white kids, And so it was like, when it was in my mind, it was like, I gotta escape to the West Coast. When I came out to the West Coast, I ran into a lot of, like, I had this dream world that, the West Coast was gonna be this perfect place, and there's gonna be no more bigotry, whatever, and come out and I could just, like, I could be gay there and it'd be great. And I just ran into so many things that, like, just totally shattered my, like, I had, like, the whole, like, Paris syndrome, where I just kind of, like, came out to the West Coast and was like, I ran into all these, like, issues, and I was like, this is not fair, and it just may come from a place of privilege, but I was like, this isn't fair, and I want to change it. I don't like this. So I just kind of did it, right? And that's, like, kind of, in a way, like, a very stubborn, kind of tantrum-y thing to do. But that was sort of just, like, I just wanted to see the world that, in my mind, that I thought that the world could be. And, I'm just glad that other people feel the same way. And other people were like, this could be better. Let's make it better. So, yeah.
And I've always appreciated how open you've been about explaining why an event like GaymerX exists. Because I remember, before I do each interview, I read up on the people I'm going to be speaking with. And there was one interview where you said something along the lines of, people who ask why GaymerX has to exist just don't get it. And so I had you on my podcast and I asked you, why does something like GaymerX have to exist? And you didn't get mad at me. And it was great. And I really appreciated you just recognizing that I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I didn't get it. I had already backed your Kickstarters because I trusted that you probably knew something about this that I didn't if you thought that GaymerX had to exist. But you took the time to explain it to me.
I mean, yeah, I think that it's, we obviously live in a really weird time right now. There's definitely, like, the onus shouldn't be on minority groups, underrepresented groups, to have to go out of their way to explain to people how, whatever. Like, they already are kind of dealing with enough. But by that same token, if we want to look at things pragmatically, like, we can't just expect the rest of the world to get better unless we actually go out of our way to help explain to them why this is the kind of world that they want to live. You know, like people who have the privilege and the power are not going to just, you know, automatically be like, yeah, let's change things up. You know, like you have to convince them this is, you know, not just going to be good for underrepresented groups, but it's actually going to make their lives better by including, you know, like the more kind of colors that we add to the pot, it's just going to make things better. And it doesn't mean that the straight or the white is going to get, you know, it's not going to get washed out. It's still going to be there. It's just going to be this nicer, better stew of, you know, flavors.
Stew.
Yeah.
All right. I actually want to talk a lot more about that specific topic, but I also want to bring in our other guests. Khadeja, I met you when you were speaking at Boston Indies, which is another monthly meetup in Boston. You were speaking about your ethnographic studies. And then you also spoke at AlterConf, and I've since heard you speak at Women in Games Boston as well. Now, similar question to Matt, what is prompting you to do all these things, to be so visible and so present and so outspoken?
I think the answer has a few facets to it. One of them is my personality. Like, I feel like, just honestly, you know, I am outgoing enough that I can go up and talk about something that I feel I have. Like, I have this knowledge base. Maybe people look at me and they don't know I have it. So I have to step up and do it, and I'm comfortable doing that. At the same time, I have it in my mind knowing that there are people who have the knowledge base who maybe don't feel comfortable going up to do it. And if I'm comfortable, I should probably go and do it. And not only that, I kind of enjoy it too. I like the spotlight, I guess, you know. That's why I'm in voiceover. I like people hearing me. Just to be really honest with you, if you had that in you and you want to help people, that's a way you should use that part of yourself. That's one part of it. Another thing is, it's related to my religion. Okay, just to be honest with you. In Islam, we believe on the Day of Judgment, when the end of times comes, we're going to stand in front of God, and he's going to be like, yo, what did you do? You know, and the thing is that you can't lie. The whole point is that you can't lie about what you've done. It's in more fanciful language, it's like your tongue will speak for you and tell God what you have done. Now, I don't even know if that's really going to happen. Okay, because I don't know. But imagine you just come to any point in your life, right? Like you're standing in front of somebody who you respect, and they're like, how could you do that thing? How could you do that thing or say that thing that you said? And if I can't at least back it up with good intentions, with knowledge, with something, like I always want to feel like I'm trying to do the right thing. So to me, it's really important to open my big mouth and do the right thing with it. You know, and I don't think I do it all the time because I talk a lot, but I feel like that's as I said, it's like my personality, and it really is a strong belief in what I was brought up in. I think that's it, yeah.
And, you know, just the odds are, if you say enough things, some of them will be right.
Yeah, right? That's safe. Actually, it's like really not. But yeah, like don't do that at all. Like, should I have some backup, please?
But I think that's lovely how you draw from your religion on that, because there are other religions with similar concepts.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the Bible's New Testament says, don't hide your light under a bushel, you know. And any talents that you have, it's to your benefit and the world's to share them. And in this case, for you, that means speaking out about things you are passionate about to these audiences.
Right, and there's something else that, you know, I know not everyone believes, but my emotional reactions to things, or not just mine, but like anyone's emotional reaction to things matters. Like it matters when you hear something and it bothers you. So examine it and then tell other people what you figured out about what's bothered you, because it's probably bothers somebody else. That's really where I started, you know, was post 9/11. I'm a Muslim. My mother wears hijab and she's much darker skinned than me. She was getting, you know, TSA freaking loves to talk to my mother, you know. I don't like that. And I know how that makes me feel. And I don't want other people joking about that. I don't want other people taking that lightly. So I will open my mouth, you know, and it always comes from a personal thing. It's never like some abstract theory about what's not right to do. It always comes from something that I've felt or seen someone else go through. Mm-hmm. And when it becomes that real, it's really hard to keep your mouth shut. You know, it gets really difficult, and it becomes more of a punishment to yourself. when you don't do something for people you give a crap about.
Oh, thank you. And Francesca, I'm speaking specifically about your founding of the Diversity in Games Club at WPI, which you did when you were, a sophomore?
I was actually a junior, but previously I had been involved in running the game development club on campus there.
Okay, so you were like 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, and what prompted you to start that group? Because I obviously I studied at WPI like you did, and I know that WPI is extremely intense. Many students can commit themselves fully to maybe one extracurricular activity or maybe two, but you decided to create your own extracurricular activity on top of double majoring.
Yeah.
And so what was the impetus to put that much strain on yourself?
I like being busy. I didn't see it as a strain. It's just like, what else can I do? What else can I do that I enjoy? And it was all work that I really enjoyed. So it never felt like straining at all, fortunately, which was great. But so the reason I decided to found the Diversity in Games Club was because I had been in this program, and I'm one of the sort of new people in the industry who had the opportunity to go through these new game development programs in university. And I think when the major itself was pretty small, but we had maybe 5 women in the starting class freshman year, and then I slowly saw them sort of drop out as the years went by, and that was really disheartening to me. So I wanted to create a sort of community where not only women, but sort of underrepresented people on campus and in the major particularly could come together and just have a space not even to always discuss like, oh, this sucks, but a place where we could just talk about the games that we like and kind of create a safe community where we all felt comfortable and could form friendships, which was really great. But yeah, so that was mostly the motivation for that there.
And the next question I have for each of the attendees, the next question I have is, how do you set out to create these groups with some goals in mind, perhaps not like a specific concrete finish line, like, oh, we're done, we can stop doing this, but you want to see some sort of a change in the world, in your community, in your life. I'm curious to know, how do you define success? How do you know when what you're doing is what you set out to do? Why don't we start with Francesca?
Okay. So I think also one of the things that really spurred me to organize this new club on campus was that I took a philosophy and ethics class related to gaming. It's one of the required courses in our major, but you're only required to take sort of one social issues class, and Dylan was in that class with me. And I think you probably agree that we went through this course, and I felt like I was learning a lot, but the last day of class came, and I gave like a presentation about like women's sexuality as it is presented in games and how it's not great most of the time. And it was me and one other woman in the class, and just the questions that arose from the other people in the class, who are mostly white young men, were a little alarming. And the professor also acknowledged they were a little alarming, that we had spent all of this time together sort of talking about sort of ethics, morality, being inclusive, and these are the people that are going to be going into the industry and forming, their own companies and things. So that was a little alarming, and I thought, hey, maybe we should create another space where it's, people can come and discuss those ideas and talk about and kind of further their knowledge about these topics. And for me, I felt successful after we had formed the club, and I would see these mostly men who would come into this space kind of a little skeptical, right? Being like, oh, like, what is this space about? Like, why does it exist? I'm just going to come because my friend invited me. And then actually getting really involved in the discussion and expressing opinions that even if they did differ a little from the majority of the club, we would have a really great discussion about it that would spur from these different ideas. So that was really great to see.
Great. Khadeja?
So the question is basically, do I feel like I've met my goals, or is that, because just to reiterate.
Well, not just if you have met your goals, because I don't think any of us is at a point in our careers where we can say that we are a success or a failure. But I want to know, how can you tell if or when you are being effective at affecting change?
Oh man. Okay. So, I don't know how good I am at affecting change because sometimes I do feel like, because for me it's more giving talks, right? It's not really like setting up a club or anything like that, which is like another way to give information to people. When you give a talk and you have the title of something like, my ethnographic study, blah, 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 it's the same type of people who show up and they already have it in their heads that they want to do a good job and do good work. So I always wonder if I'm just kind of reinforcing something that has to be said, or if I'm actually getting somebody to be like, that's a different thing, and I'm going to do this thing differently. I just don't know. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. It means that maybe I'm lacking in touching base with people after I give a talk. It could very well be the case. Or maybe perhaps I am just not talking to the people who need to have their eyes open, or those people aren't ready to come and listen to my talks. So I can't, so maybe if that's my job, right, to reinforce that, I don't necessarily think that's the worst thing to do, but it does make me wonder if I'm doing the best that I can. Like, it is an insecurity, just to be really, really honest with you about that. Yeah.
And do you have any talks upcoming where you can apply these criteria to see, hey, that was a great talk?
I do have something going on at 2 p.m. today with lovely Carolyn Van Esseltine. We're a great team because, like, I'm academic background and I did research and stuff, and she's just written stuff. Like, she's just, like, created. And while I'm all theoretical and, like, all up in here and, like, thinking, like, she's actually done it, and is such empathy that I knew we had to talk to her. So our talk is all about how our two worlds meet and how she and I both are now, like, we kind of have grown off of each other's knowledge bases. And I think that, like, if I can at least get someone to come in and say, oh, how nice that two different types of people did something good together, like, I would feel like that's a great accomplishment because it shows people that two different worlds, they don't collide all the time. Like, they, like, actually sit side by side and make good stuff together. So, yeah, I really hope that it does, like, not inspires. I hope it inspires people. I mean, I hate the way that sounds, but, like, I really hope that it makes people think about it a little bit. I do think that's an accomplishment. I don't want to belittle any little bit of thought. It doesn't have to reach a certain threshold that I'm happy. I'm still learning to deal with the fact that sometimes you can't enact everything you want, and that you should be proud of whatever you can do.
Yeah, I recommend going to that talk. Carolyn is also an alumna of Polygamer, and so is Philip Jones, who is here this weekend. So there are quite a few people. It's sort of like a who's who of Polygamer. It's exciting. And Matt, hey. So I'm wondering, your event, GaymerX, is very concrete. It's perhaps more concrete than what the rest of us are doing. And you could define success in any number of ways. You could say that more than X number of attendees is a success. You could say that ending the event in the red, or rather the black. I always confuse those two colors.
In the red.
That's not a good business.
No. You could say that ending in the red is a failure. So, for example, but probably you have goals beyond just the bottom line of GaymerX. Because you certainly when you set out to create GaymerX, you hoped you would break even, but you didn't set out necessarily to make a profit. This is not a money-making venture for you. You have other ideals at stake here. So how do you define success?
If the bottom line or, like, getting number of attendees were, like, that's easy, right? Like, that's not, you can't really correlate the quantity to the quality. Like, the point of GaymerX is to have a space for people who, feel like they need this space. And if that's for 50 people or for 5,000, it doesn't really, to me, I don't care. As long as, we can keep doing it, as long as, like literally it doesn't cost us more money than we can spend, and then we can't do it anymore. It's tough because, I definitely have, like, moving goalposts. When we created the first GaymerX, I thought it would just be one and done, and we would just kind of create, like, this really cool, like, it didn't have to be sustainable. I didn't care if we made any money on it. We didn't. But I just wanted to make something really cool just to kind of show the industry, like, you can have, an event like this and it can be successful and just show people that, like, we exist. But so many people were like, "Oh, this is important. I want to keep going to this thing. I've met so many friends. Like, I want to keep going." And so, I was like, "Okay, let's keep doing it." But I'm also like super cognizant of like, at least when it was just GaymerX in San Francisco, that you're basically providing space to the people who have the most privilege, who can afford to live in the Bay Area or can afford to fly out there. Like, that limits it to so many people. And logistically, I would love to if we could bring GaymerX to like rural areas or places. Like, I can't even imagine if if y'all are, no offense, but I think none of you are under 18. So right? Okay, no, that's an offense. No, that's an offense. But I mean, just in terms of like, we're all adults here. I can't even imagine right now like what it's like to be a teenage queer kid. Like in this, right now, like if you think about how bad it was for you, just imagine what it's like today. And that's why I'm like, I want to figure out how we can reach, people in those areas. And it's tough because, and that's where I feel like I fail, where it's like, we can only work within the confines of like what resources are available to us. Like Microsoft wants to give us space. They don't have a space in like Kansas or something. I mean, maybe they do, but like we have to kind of work within those means. And so for us, that's part of why we created Read Only Memories. And before Read Only Memories, we actually created an app called Gamer Connect, which was supposed to be like a gay gamer, like kind of dating, meeting each other website that we made, but it was just too logistically complicated to, use. Because, to build an app like that, you need money. But creating Read Only Memories was like, how do we create something that is scalable, that isn't just going to, speak to a very, like, with an event, we have, 500-700 people here, 2,000, 3,000 people GaymerX. Like, that's only a fraction of a percent of the gay population out there. So by creating a game, we're like, okay, well, how do we create something that's going to be, scalable, that we can kind of get out to a larger population and kind of show people that you can include queer positive characters in games, and it's like, it doesn't have to be boring or like, it can be something that's like, I want it to be something that can normalize these characters in mainstream. And that to me is like my like success point. Is like, I want to make sure that like there are different goals, but like with GaymerX, I'm not trying to like reach the world. I just want to make sure that people who need a space have that space. But with like Read Only Memories and like our digital products, I want to make sure that we reach as many people as possible, just so they can kind of see these characters that maybe they don't normally see and be like, oh yeah, like, because you imagine like the most like conservative, just like awful person who just like, I always play games, like video games, and they go, oh well, this game had a gay character in it or whatever, and go, I guess that wasn't so bad, right? Or like, oh, I didn't like that. That guy was so annoying. But like, at least they saw him, and they acknowledged that he existed, right? And like, that's like a step from wherever their mind was before. So that's kind of our goals. Like, there's different goals, right? Like GaymerX, I want to hold the highest standard possible, and to make sure that we have the best space and like, hold everyone to the high standard. But with our games, I understand that if we want to be subversive and change minds, we can't necessarily come out the gate and be like judge. We have to kind of slowly allow them to, come back to the good side of things.
So what you said about Microsoft not having a space in Kansas, I actually go to a computer convention in Kansas City, Missouri every July. And this past summer, I was giving a talk there on retro gaming. And I had a list of classic Apple II computer games. And I said, if you grew up playing these games, then you should check out these Steam games, because they have very similar concepts, aesthetics, gameplay, whatever. And I said, if you liked Shadowgate and Deja Vu and The Uninvited, then you should check out Read Only Memories. And I showed the game off, and I talked about what they would like about it. And I said, one of the unusual things about this game is that you can choose your own pronouns. You can choose your own gender identity. So if you are accustomed to playing games where you don't see yourself represented, Read Only Memories is a game where you can. And people come from all over the world to attend this convention. They're not all from the Midwest. But there were some people in the audience who had a look of absolute befuddlement on their faces as I talked about this. Because for some of them, they may never have heard of that concept before or not understood why it mattered. But what I didn't know when I was giving that talk was that there were 3 transgender individuals in the audience. And we'd never had anybody from that demographic at that event before. And they came up to me after and said, we can't wait to check out that game.
I mean, yeah, well, I think there's 2 different goals with that. It's like, I want to make sure that people who don't see themselves in games are like, like, cool, I can see myself, I can play it myself, whatever. But when I go and, like, cause I try to, as not good as it is for the soul, I try to like really keep my mind open in terms of like I read the 4chan threads and stuff about our games and GaymerX and stuff. Like I really I try to dive deep. I need to know what they're thinking. Like I have to. And you know it's hard. At least at the beginning it was really soul crushing. But you know I see people making fun of it and being like, but like they still play the game and they go, oh, I chose the Z pronouns because that's funny, right? But you don't know. Like the thing is that they might live in a conservative environment where like they're never allowed to explore these feelings ever. Right, and the fact that they are now, we're created with a video game, like that is their safe space. They can go and like if they maybe nothing comes of it, maybe that is like how they can actually explore like that they're having gender feelings, right? Cool, and like make fun of it. I don't care. Like I mean, I'm glad that you have this like cool plays whatever pronoun. Like I mean, that's the point, you know. And it sucks that like they haven't connected the pieces, right? But yeah, like I'm glad like so. It's been interesting because like the original goal wasn't necessarily for that. Like the original goal was just to kind of be like, I want to make sure that people who are coming to it from different gender backgrounds can see themselves. But seeing people who would normally just be like, yeah, like you know, whatever, play as someone that isn't male or identifying pronouns just because it's like, oh, they're exploring. Like to me, that's actually like that might be someone who in 5-10 years from now is like, oh, okay, like. That actually helped me figure out what I was going through, you know. Yeah, like one of my best friends growing up was like the most like conservative, just awful jerk. Like he's a super bully, and at the time, like just a bad person. And like 5-10 years later, you know, they transitioned. They were like, yeah, I just couldn't like to deal with those feelings at the time, and I just, you know, was just raging, right? And you know, I want to make sure like. I hope that like games like this can kind of help people kind of be like, at least. I worry that with like Facebook. I mean, this all ties into like, if you are someone who's queer or have feelings of things or whatever, but you're in a conservative background or all of your cohorts are all like of one mindset, right? And so you get like the red feed. It's very hard for you to find outlets for these things. You just have to like deeper compress it. And so I worry about making sure that we have some way for people who. You know, might live in those areas or be surrounded by those cohorts to have an outlet for those feelings.
Yeah. Nonetheless, though, it can still be rather discouraging. We do all this work. We put these games out here. We put out these events, and they're well received. But as you know from Re4chan, they're not received always the way we hope or intend. And especially at this point in our lives, it's very easy to get discouraged. Things don't always go the way we expect. And so I'd like to know from each of you how you keep yourselves inspired, how you keep yourselves going. When you get discouraged, who do you look to for inspiration, or what do you tell yourself to keep yourself going? Like if you want to call out some heroes of yours, or some books that you read, or some mantras that you utter, anything that you do just to let yourself know that this is worth doing. Khadeja?
I think the first answer I want to give is I allow myself to say, I'm not doing this. No. Not doing this today. You know, that honestly, if I didn't do that sometimes, I don't know what kind of person I would be. I'd probably be so angry that I couldn't even form my thoughts properly. If I got up in front of people, I don't even know what I would be able to say. You know, just to be really honest with you, sometimes the answer to that question is like, how do you stay inspired? By remembering that you're a person and that you can step back and you can choose when to look at or not look at something. And I'm not saying, like, sometimes, you know, when you're from communities or when you are involved in communities that deal with oppressed people, okay, like you have I feel like you have every right in the universe to just step back and close your eyes for a sec. In terms of when I want to get back into things, I tend to listen to a lot of System of a Down, and I work out, and I like seriously, like I just remember like fuck the system sucks. And like I try and like just I read Octavia Butler and I just remember that I'm not alone. There are other people who have felt similar things to me, and that we need to just keep on talking. So I look at literature and I look at music. I do also, I have to admit it, I look at my religion as well. There are a lot of like stories and parables that come from my religion from since I was very little that have comforted me over the years and had me remember who I am, where I came from, and actually, I'm sorry, I know it's like a running list, but, in connection to that, those stories that I have, they come from my family. And that's one thing that's a very cheesy answer, but my grandmother was the first Muslim woman in her country to drive in a car. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is a really big deal. And she was also one of the only girls in her family of her age to go through all the school that was available to girls. And when I remember her, okay, that helps me a lot because I'm like, well, it's not, oh, she went through so much. It's, she had the tools to get through so much. And I just have to remember that I have them as well. I have it in me. And I'll tell you, some of the cheesiest things get talked about by people who go through a lot. We talk about God a lot. We talk about our family a lot. And the reason is because, those things are so primally integrated into what comforts us. And I think that if you have someone to look to in your own family who can inspire you, that's a freaking gift that I have. I have my grandmother who, as I said, not only was she all those things, she was she was a women's rights activist at a time when that didn't exist, and I have to respect that. And I have to say, she fought for something important. And I think it's time for me to pick myself off the floor and try again. I think that's my long ass answer.
Francesca?
Well, because I was going to say that I feel very outclassed on this panel because you guys are people that I actually look to when I'm feeling down. And I need, every time I hear you speak, I'm, monumentally moved. And there are people in the audience, actually, are people who I look to for inspiration when I'm just not feeling it that day or that week or anything. Yeah, I'm going to start crying, actually. Here, I'll pass it on and I'll come back to you.
No worries.
Well, I mean, honestly, coming to GaymerX and running these events is always what inspires me in terms of just that's sounds weird, but I don't really like planning events. I don't like doing logistic stuff. I don't like. It's annoying. I really hate it. I mean, I like talking to people. I like doing stuff, and GaymerX is a lot of work, and a lot of it is volunteer based. And, when you're volunteers, they have good heart. You kind of have to do most of the work because people are volunteering their time, so you have to at least logistically. But then when I come to the event and I see what this means to people, and people tell their stories, or they say, "Oh, because of this event, I started doing this or that, or I met this person who, whatever." I'm it inspired me so much to be okay, I am doing something that matters, And it's tough because when you read stuff on 4chan or on the internet, and you're not going to the events and you're just planning it all year. You're like, what am I doing? People don't seem to care, and it's not until you actually go to the event and you kind of see when that it's all becomes real again. And I think that just talking to people and building these relationships and seeing how much people just even in the last couple of years have just been so much more comfortable about kind of just being their true selves, and just how much of a change that was from 5-10 years ago when you go to these events. It's a lot more straight laced. But honestly, in terms of people who inspire me, I'm actually I don't know if any of y'all went to Playing with Pride panel yesterday, but Matt Baum is really, really cool. He's this guy in Seattle who's filming this documentary about queer gamers, and he does a million things at once. He has a book about redefining marriage, and, about all these people who offer for queer marriage and all these other things. And, I don't know. When I see other people who just are just I want to fix this too, it helps me realize that I'm not. It's okay, not to talk about politics, but seeing all the protests and stuff really riled me up. Because when at first I was are people not outraged? Is this really going to happen? And seeing that people are that willing to go out there and fight makes me go okay, I'm not alone in my feelings here. And people are willing to put their own physical safety on the line or brave the cold or whatever. I should at least have the power to say something on my social network or among my friends, and so I think that when I see the bravery of people who are being what I think more brave than me, that inspires me to really step up my bravery game a little bit.
No, that's awesome. It's good to know that you're in good company, that there are other people out there doing work like that. I want to mention some people that inspire me. Certainly people who have been on my podcast, because more often than not, these are people who don't know me, and I'm approaching them on the internet and saying, hey, I'm a white dude who identifies as a gamer who wants you to explain to me why you do what you do. That is not an invitation that a lot of people are going to say yes to. And yet they do. They give me the benefit of the doubt. They trust that people have good intentions. They see the best in people. And they put themselves out there to talk about something they're passionate about. Everybody on this stage has done that, and I'm so grateful to each of you who have done that.
Not to interrupt you, though, but I mean, like, it's clear that you're coming from a place of good faith. And I think that's the biggest difference, is that when people are like, why do you guys do this thing? It's like, we're smart people. Like, we have intuition. You can generally tell when someone's coming from a place of good or bad faith. And it's obvious that you're someone who actually cares and wants to make this world a better place. And you care about gaming. You want to see more voices represented. And then you that's why you do what you do. And so that's why I think people want to talk to you. Is like, it's not like people are like, oh, we don't want to. If you're a white, straight, cis male, you're a bad person. It's that, it's just that people are coming from a place of bad faith generally when they're like questioning motives. But when you're coming from a place of good faith and you're like, yeah, like, I want to make this place better. Like, cool, great. Like, I wish everyone was like you,
Well, thank you, Matt, but intentions only go so far. I mean, I have made mistakes. I have said things I regret. And I try to learn from them. Two people in particular I want to call out as inspirational to me. One is Susan Arndt, who is the managing editor of Games Radar, and more specifically to this panel, the co-founder of Take This, which is a nonprofit that promotes awareness of and addresses issues of mental health in the gaming community. They run the AFK rooms at PAX. If you've ever been to PAX, this is a safe space where you can go to just chill out and even speak with a licensed psychologist if you need some help. If you find that all the clamor of PAX is too much, or if you're just dealing with some other issues that happen to come up at PAX, that's a safe space for you to go. And I just think it's remarkable that an event like a place like that exists. And waypoint.vice.com has an article about Take This right now. I don't know if that's Waypoint's editor-in-chief who just plugged that.
No, just a fan.
Just a fan, okay.
Yesterday, Austin.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Okay, you know what? That article that you're talking about is in my Instapaper queue, and I need to talk to him because that is a topic I think needs to be addressed on my podcast. Great, thank you. And another two people who inspire me are Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn. First of all, Feminist Frequency is what inspired me to do the PAX panel that inspired this podcast. Yeah. But more than that, those two professionals have been through so much shit, and they just keep going. I mean, after the election this week, Anita Sarkeesian immediately put up a video in response to it. And Zoe Quinn, she's doing a Kickstarter right now about Pounded in the Butt with Chuck Tingle. I mean, with all the shit she's gone through, she's still out there making silly, goofy games and having fun. I don't know that I could do it.
I just need to correct Ken. Chuck Tingle, is this serious business?
Yeah,
serious. Just so you know, it's not a joke. No.
Have you read these videos of Pounded in the Butt on Kickstarter or something?
I stand corrected. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I believe it's Kickstarted in the butt.
Yeah, Kickstarted in the butt.
Yeah.
I meant no offense. I make mistakes. I learn from them.
Internalize it.
Okay. I'm sorry. Speaking from a place of privilege here. On that note, why don't we open it up to questions? If anybody in the audience has anything they'd like to ask any one of the four people up here, just raise your hand and I'll come over with a microphone. Okay, we have a question. Hello, young lady.
You gotta be kidding me. You talked about read-only memories with the confidence that you're familiar with the game. Can you give, for the people listening or in the room who may not be familiar with read-only memories, can you give a fast summary? It doesn't just context.
Of course, wow. So Read-Only Memories is a game that I think after GaymerX 1 or GaymerX 2, someone came up and was like, well, when are you guys going to make your own game? It was after GaymerX 1, yeah. They're like, why don't you guys make a game? You made a conference, make a game. And I was like, okay.
So easy.
Yeah, so easy. And so we thought about it, and we were like, okay, how do we include our GaymerX mascot, which is this little, blue robot Turing. There's actually two mascots, the other one kind of just faded away a little bit. But how do we include our mascots and create like this gay game? And we were trying to think, how do we create a game that's going to be queer, but also like fun for everybody, but also be inclusive for everybody, right? Like, I mean, if we make a game that's like, okay, starring, straight white cis, protagonists, then it's just gonna be the same old. If we choose like something that's like too diverse, right, then it's all of a sudden gonna be like, oh, the gay people made a diversity game, right? And I was like, that's never gonna hit. I want to make sure that we're going to put effort into something that's going to be something that people are going to ingest. I think that one of the things I really like about things like Steven Universe, and Empire is like these are shows that are subversive to an extent. Like Empire deals with a lot of cross-sectionality within the POC universe, and deals with mental disabilities, queerness, all these things, but they combine it with just like this really interesting kind of soap opera and really cool music and stuff like that. So that way it reaches an audience that might never be like, I don't necessarily watch a queer show. Or even with Steven Universe, I think if you had originally advertised it as like 3 lesbian space rocks, then I don't think that the average Joe Schmo might not get invested in it. But I think that the fact that they kind of at least originally centered it around like this boy protagonist and kind of allowed it to subvert to this other thing, allowed it to become a thing. So I think that when we started working on the game, like how do we create something subversive, how do we create something that's going to be ingested well? So we created a point and click where the protagonist is just you, and you choose your pronouns, and you kind of just like ingest it into the world, and turning the gender neutral robot kind of is like the mouthpiece for you. And so yeah, we created a point and click, and growing up, I was really inspired by games like Snatcher and reunite and Phoenix Wright. So it's just like, I want to create something kind of in that realm. And I also realized that doing something in the point and click world allows for, because there's so much text, you can include queer content in a way that isn't like if you make like a puzzle. Like in my mind, is if you create an action game and you're like going through different levels. If you have like a cut scene, it's like okay, like it's just like very like it would just be weirdly like I mean, not that you couldn't do it, but like then I didn't want it to be like the gay game. I wanted it to be something. I wanted to create a product that the average, like consumer would just look at and be like, oh, that's interesting, and it's by the time they get in, hopefully by the time they start playing the game, get the story, they get hooked. That they even if they don't really like queerness, or they're like, oh, well, I don't like pixie culture, or whatever. They kind of are like, whatever. They give it a chance, right? Because that's kind of our hope is like how do we create something. So we don't know the game, Real Memories, point-click adventure, takes us to Neo San Francisco, 50 years in the future, explores gender, and lots of stuff because of the way that it's too preachy, and it's coming out for PS4 and Xbox in January. Voice acting, including voice acting from Zoe Quinn, and lots of really, Zoe Quinn's in it, and what's his face from Different Strokes?
Gary Coleman?
No, not Gary Coleman. The other one, Willis. Todd Bridges.
Okay.
Todd Bridges is in it. The voice of Lee from The Walking Dead, Clementine from The Walking Dead, and Chid from Just for Golden, and Launchpad and Quack.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
We're like,
Wow, that's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you can check out the current version of Real Memories on the show floor this weekend.
Oh no, it's the new version.
Oh, it's the new version.
Yeah,
All right.
It's all done. It's been done for a while. We're just
Excellent. And Starcross is down there too, right? You should check that out.
Oh yeah, so quickly plugging the new thing I'm doing since I've emerged from college. So I am the one of the co-founders for Contigo Games. We're down in the exhibitor hall right now showing the first game that we're working on, which is called Starcrossed. It's a cooperative bullet hell game about magical girlfriends in space. Saw some good reactions, thanks. We're really, really excited about it. We're planning on putting in like a story mode where you can actually choose different characters to play as and kind of interact with the world and save the galaxy from their perspective. So it includes both characters who identify as women, but also characters who identify as non-binary. We're taking a lot of inspiration from very classical sort of magical girl things like Sailor Moon and Cardcaptor Sakura, things like that. So please come check us out if you have a minute.
Cool. Khadeja, do you have anything you want to plug?
I'm really sorry, Ken, that I put you on the spot about Chuck Tingle. That's what I'm working on right now.
Wait, you're working on that?
Yeah.
What?
No, I'm working on asking you for forgiveness.
Oh.
Yeah, no, not working.
That's a much harder assignment.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That takes more time and effort.
Yeah, seriously.
Hey, I thought this was like an announcement. You're like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm working on this weird gay.
By the way, I am Zoe Quinn.
I'm Zoe Quinn and Chuck Ting.
No.
All at the same
Anyway.
time.
I just realized that Zoe Quinn is Symmetra. Not Symmetra. Zoe Quinn is Sombra in real life.
Yeah, kind of.
You know, because Zoe Quinn has like the chip, like
Oh.
arm, and she can like hack like things with it. And stuff. And I was like, never really put it together. But
She too has been on my podcast.
Sombra?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
She's only on the public test server right now. So that's pretty cool.
So we're wrapping up here. I just want to say, to disclose any conflicts of interest, if I have mentioned anybody up here, like Take This or Kickstart in the Butt or Feminist Frequency, you should just assume I gave them money at some point, whether it was Kickstarter or Patreon. Everybody up here, I've had dinner with each of you because we're all friends. We're awesome. You're awesome. Thank you for being my friends. And why don't we just, on the way out, mention again who we are and where you can find us online? Matt?
Well, I think that if you enjoy this show and you enjoy topics like this, you should right now make a note to go on your local Podbean or iTunes and subscribe to Polygamer, because it's a great show that you can listen to every other week and get some good learnings in. And it's not too long, and it's a good, keeps your mind fresh. Polygamer. Yeah, my name is Matt Conn. You can follow me on that thing. And you can check out Read Only Memories, 2064 Read Only Memories. Downstairs, there's like a room where we're showing it off and see all the voice acting. And check it out. It's coming in January.
Thank you, Matt.
I'm Khadeja. I'm also a voiceover artist, and you can find me at khadejasvoices.com, and I'm on Twitter as Khachov or KHAKHOV, and I like making friends, so say hi.
Yay. Francesca?
I'm Francesca. You can find me on Twitter at Chesky. It's CESCHIII. And you can also find Contigo Games on Twitter. We're just at Contigo Games.
Thank you. And I'm Ken Gagne, host of the Polygamer podcast. You can find me at polygamer.net. Thank you.
So now what?
This has been Polygamer, a Gamebits production. Find more episodes, read our blog, or send feedback at polygamer.net.
Who's my dream guest?
Who's your dream?
I was astonished when Zoe Quinn agreed to be on my show. And, you know, she was calling from an undisclosed location, and it was, I think, like a bar in the Bay Area or something. And I was kind of annoyed at first because she knew I was going to be calling her. She chose to call me from a bar where it was really noisy. And I was kind of shocked that in the end, the audio quality was really good. Except every now and then you could hear Journey in the background. Which I think actually made for a better podcast. I did ask Anita Sarkeesian to come on the show, and it turns out she actually doesn't do podcasts at all. And she has given talks about how she doesn't really allow herself to speak off the cuff. She really feels the need to script herself, because otherwise she'll say or do something that the wrong people will take advantage of. So that's completely understandable. I don't really have any dream guests at the moment. Like, I was so impressed when I had Zoe Quinn, and then Taylor Davis, who was a violinist whose work I really admire. She came on the show. I've tried to get the Double Clicks, but they now have their own podcast, so certainly they would be dedicating their energy there. So that makes perfect sense. I go to conferences like this. I listen to what people are saying that's fascinating or interesting, and very often it's topics that had not occurred to me before. So in a way, my dream guest is somebody who makes me aware of something that I didn't even realize was an issue. So I unfortunately cannot answer the question, what issues am I not aware of? A recent guest on my show was Tristan D. Lala, the voice actor who played Adewale in Assassin's Creed 4, Freedom Cry. And he doesn't know me from Adam. I just sent him a tweet. Said, hey, I do a podcast. Do you want to be on it? And he wrote back and said, sure. And my jaw hit the ground. I'm like, are you serious?
That's so nice, yeah.
I know. I mean, I teach a graduate course in publishing in Boston, and I have my students produce a podcast. And they are always like, we don't know anybody. Who are we going to interview? And I'm like, think of somebody you would love to interview, find them on Twitter, and tweet at them. And they're like, what? I'm like, seriously, it works. Because people live lives of quiet desperation. They love to tell their own story. The greatest gift you can give somebody is the opportunity to talk about themselves. And that's what a podcast it can be. Yeah. And it works out great.
I think that's fantastic that you're encouraging your students to just reach out to these people that they feel are like completely out of their league. Because like, even being like back in school, I went to my first GDC and felt completely sort of like, I went by myself sort of on a scholarship, and I knew a few other friends there, and I felt completely out of my league. And completely like I could not approach anyone because why would they want to talk to me? But just reaching out on Twitter helped me a lot. Just reaching out and being like, hey, your stuff is cool. I'm at GDC also, want to hang out? And a lot of people just said, yeah. Yeah.
One of my students, he is not on social media at all. He's a huge introvert, not on Twitter, Facebook, anything. But I told him just reach out to somebody that you really admire. And so he emailed Dana Simpson, the artist behind the comic Heavenly Nostrils, also known as Phoebe and Her Unicorn. And Dana Simpson wrote back and said, sure, let's talk. And Dana herself is transgender, so we'll talk about that issue as well. No, I'm sorry, that's not an issue. That topic. So it was a great podcast. And he got the opportunity to speak to one of his stars. Yeah. And this happens to be a comic that I read every single day. I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to listen to your homework. You know who I wish I could have had on my podcast, who I can't now, unfortunately, is Satoru Iwata. Yeah. Because just the way he melded the business side and the fun, how he always said he was a gamer at heart, and how there are a lot of mainstream video games that I have not played because I don't see them as having a lot of heart in them. And so I've just let them pass by. But Nintendo has made a lot of bad business decisions, but they've made a lot of good games. Nintendo is what really got me into gaming. I'd already been playing Atari, but it wasn't until Nintendo that I really fell in love with the medium. And that remains true. I still love what they do. I'm going to buy the Switch the day it comes out. Same way I bought the Wii U, the Wii, the GameCube, the N64, the Super Nintendo, and the Nintendo. And I feel like a lot of that heart was driven by Satoru Iwata, who passed away last July, a year and a half ago. I was actually having dinner with Sabriel Maston, who has been a guest on my show, when she found out from reading Twitter and shared the news with me, and that was a very sad dinner. Yeah, I hope that Nintendo can continue to preserve that spirit without him. So.
Real quick, how much do you think the Switch is going to cost?
How much is the Switch going to cost at launch? A critical matter of diversity and equality.
I have a number in my head, and I think if they go above it, it's over. I think it's going to be Wii U again.
So the Wii U launched at... There were two models. There were 300 and 350.
Oh, right, yeah. And that was not...
Yeah. So I think it can't be more than 300.
Yeah.
But if they really want this to succeed in the way that the Wii U did not, I think they have to shoot for 250. Because isn't that what the Wii came out at?
No, 199.
Really? The Wii was 199?
Yeah. I think 199 is the magic number.
I think, given that it's been almost a decade since that came out, I don't think they can do that again. Especially given, well, the Wii actually was the only profitable system, right? The Xbox 360 and the PS3 lost money on every sale. Nintendo was making money.
Even now, PS4 is it's way more technology in it. Like, you think of that, it's like a computer, right? A really high-end computer you're getting for $400, $300.
Right. I don't know.
The money back on it.
But there's so many components to the Switch. There's the cradle, the screen, the controllers, and. Are you laughing at me?
No. Just this intense conversation going on here.
So I'm not a hardware guy. I've never built a PC, obviously, but I think that they can't do 200. I don't think they can afford it.
I think they can afford it.
I
think if they want to be back to being the market leader again, they should do that.
Do you think the price will be what determines if they are the market leader or not?
I think it's a big. If they're going to continue to not have any third-party support and only roll out first-party games, yes.
I don't know. I think the mobile screen will be too small for console players, and I think limiting themselves to a mobile architecture will be too underpowered for other people. So I think they're trying to please both audiences and are going to fail at both.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I'm going to buy it.
I'm gonna buy it too because it's I'm a big Monster Hunter player, and that's like a Monster Hunter machine. Like it's perfect for it. So I'm just really excited about that particularly. But yeah, the price point, I don't know. I'm probably not going to buy it on launch.
But also the fact that it doesn't have like all these bizarre 2 screens, mobile controls, touch interface. I think that that's the lack of a touch interface. People are used to that now. But I think the fact that it lacks all those unique features will make it easier for third parties to port their games to it. So that's actually a pro in that respect. Nobody wants to release games for the Wii U because they're like, oh, what do we do with the second screen?
But they're gonna just like, I don't know if I can say this. Well, whatever. But like like Xbox One, if you want to make a game for Xbox, if you're like independent developer, they just give you Xboxes for free. For PS4, it's free. But you have to like have like a VPN and those stuff, right?
And for Nintendo, don't you need to have an office?
No, they pulled back some of those things, but it's like $5,000 for the dev kit.
Oh,
right?
It's a drop in the bucket.
Right, and it's just like they. I mean, this has always been the issue, right? Even back to N64, it's just like they just don't care about third-party people. They don't get it, and I think that was okay back in the old day when like third-party games were like so like there was a reason why there was the NES stamp quality, and why they were like, oh, Game Studio can only release 5 games on the NES per year.
Yep.
Because people were just putting shovelware on there, right? And there has to be some curation, but when you get to the point where you're like, basically, you have no support for third-party games, and nothing's coming out on it. And when it does, it's buried under all the first party gets there. And I think that's a mistake right now when there's so much great if you're not going to release Mother 3 and you're not going to go after and put Undertale on the system, you're just going to okay, people of course are going to find somewhere else to go to get their fix. They're not going to just wait and be like, oh, I guess I'm not going to play games now. No.
Okay. What was that $99 Android console that? Yeah.
Yeah.
That didn't work.
About it.
Everyone forgot about it,
Yeah.
which is kind of
I
unfortunate.
didn't forget it. They gave us money. They were
Nice.
we were part of the Free the Games Fund thing on
Oh, yeah.
Kickstarter for Read Only Memories. So that was
I remember all
The only reason I got Ouya is because I backed the Reading Rainbow Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And then they didn't get me a Reading Rainbow branded Ouya.
Yeah.
Like in the end, they said, sorry, too few people selected this for work, so we're just going to give you a regular Ouya. But here's a coupon for a free controller.
That's
Wow.
devastating.
And by the time it shipped, Ouya had declared bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Like, wow, thanks. Anyway.
Wait, can we answer the previous question still?
Anyway, there is a panel in here at 15 minutes, and we need to clear the room to give them time to prepare. So thank you all for coming.
Yay,
Appreciate it.
thanks, guys.
Have a great weekend.